on the
Under
bottom bar.
Excellent.
it isn't in the center. It was in the little three dots, bizarrely. But we are good now. I've found it.
Excellent, excellent.
So over to you, Tim, for a little intro.
Thank you very much. I will try not to make this too long. I did make a few notes as I was thinking, reflecting back on the 20 plus years that I've known you, Julie. And although it's 20 or so years, we seldom kind of cross. But what I realized, interestingly enough, what was interesting from my point of view, was that when we do, when our paths do cross, it's very much at times of new beginnings and new starts. And here we are at the start of 2024. I'll just put some reference in that for people that catch up with this on playback, or those of you that are here now with us, because the first time I met Julie was way back in 2003, when I was first starting to do some work with Hamish Miller, and we were putting the team together for what became the Spirit of the Serpent. And Julie, Hamish suggested working with Julie because I'm not sure what the interaction had been with Hamish and yourself at that time, but he knew you reasonably well and quite well, and knew of Rupert, your husband, and the two of you came on board, which was fantastic. And we made that. We spent those 3 days in the freezing cold at the Merry Maidens in Cornwall, and we had the wonderful Claire Grogan with us for a couple of days, and that was super, really lovely. And I have to say, the fact that you were there, Julie, in that time where I was literally, it was when, again, just for people that don't know this, but literally when my world was completely changing, and you were studying, you were doing some academic work at the time, and you kept saying, everything is intention. Intention is absolutely everything. It's fundamental to everything. And it's like, and this saying kind of really sort of seeped into me. And it's still what I say to people that I mentor or anything, or when I'm talking about this stuff, it's still your words that I use today, right? And it's really interesting how we sometimes, a lot of the time when we're doing this work, especially with the internet and all the different social media platforms, we don't realize how much we're affecting people, and at what level, because most of the time they don't give us feedback. We never hear from most of the people that we affect. Now, as house healers, this network is about house healing. It's about working with intent. It's about working with intuition and finding that stuff, working with the management, as Hamish would say, and really diving in there and opening that heart space for individual people. Now, those people that we work with individually, of course, we see the effect, we see the change, we get that difference, but we don't with all of those people that just catch us on YouTube or catch us on whatever platform it is. So, Julie, just for everybody, very, very intuitive lady, goes without saying. She's head of the, what do you now call it?
Insight and Intuition.
Yeah, so it's an online platform now. So it started as the School of Insight and Intuition in southwest of London. So you're still principal of that, is that right?
Yes. I tried to hand it over at one point, but it came back to me.
Yeah, okay. So I urge every one of you that's watching this, and that will be sharing this space with Julie in the next half hour, 40 minutes, however long you want to talk, Julie, it's up to you, see how it goes. But I urge everyone that's listening to this, everybody in the network that's listening to Julie, the reason I've invited Julie on is because she not only has this wonderful intuitive ability, like gift that was given her from birth as part of who she is, but she also is one of the most grounded and common sense people you're ever going to meet. So the balance between the need for action, the need to do things, as well as the need to just to be and allow and filter and respond. Julie, to me, summarizes these things. And a lot of you, probably some of you that are not with us in person now, but will be watching the playback, I would urge you to really think about contacting Julie after this session. And I've asked Julie to actually highlight the work that she does and the mentoring that she gives and the courses that she runs, because the sort of work that Julie does is the sort of work that you need if you are going to step into the life that you want to be leading. And I know so many of you are at that space and in that position of going around in circles a little bit about, oh, I know I'm sensitive, I know I'm intuitive, dare I step out and do this? Dare I? And I'm sure Julie will have some comments about that sort of attitude and that sort of approach, but fundamentally that's why I've invited Julie on today. And I think actually what we'll do is after at a later stage, Julie, perhaps you and I will talk about getting you onto my YouTube channel, and we can talk and get some publicity for your work. Yeah, that way as well, and to build that link again, that'd be great. So, everybody, we've left it fairly open and broad. It's a heading of psychic and spiritual development, and that's all we need to say. And Julie's going to share some of her experiences and whatever else comes to her during this time. I hope I haven't kind of waffled on for too long. Over to you, Julie. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you, Tim, and it's very nice to link up with you again. So I just come back at a couple of things you said. Hamish Miller, who was just a lovely man, quite a famous dowser, and he used to come to my workshops at a time that I was doing workshops all over the country and all over the world, actually. And he used to sit in the front row staring at me, absolutely staring at me, saying very little and staring. And then after he'd been about half a dozen times, he came up to me and he said, "I've been watching you." And I said, "Yes, I know you have." He said, "I've been watching you," he said, "and you haven't put a foot wrong." Which is, oh, he's just such a lovely man. You meet wonderful people along the way, don't you? And the other thing, I'll come back at you, Tim, is, and I had forgotten, yes, I was in the middle of a PhD when we did that film, and I had, my PhD was on psychospiritual education and its effect on those that participate. And I had really clearly found out that intention was everything. And I may talk a little bit more about that later on. So I was thinking about this, and as you say, we've left it fairly open. So I'm going to say a little bit about my background and how things progressed for me. But I want to say one thing first. In my opinion, in my knowing, everybody has psychic ability. Everybody. So you could call it a gift, but it's a gift we all have. And it's a gift that some of us use and some of us don't, but it's there. And I'll talk more about how that works in a minute. So I think I was 4 years old when I realized that I could see things that other people didn't apparently see. I could tell when people were lying. I used to get what I then called a telex going on above their heads when they were saying something, and actually what they were thinking was something else. So, and that went on through my childhood, and it got very strong in my teens. And I have to admit that I didn't use it very well at that time. But I got to a point, I was about 18, when I actually thought, well, nobody else seems to be like me. Perhaps there's something desperately wrong with me. Perhaps I ought to take myself off to a psychiatrist or something. Fortunately, I didn't, and I won't bore you with the long thing that drew me to this work. But basically, I was ill, not seriously ill, and a neighbor said to me, "You need to go to a healer." I didn't know what a healer was. I didn't know anything. I had a fairly sort of ordinary background, really. So anyway, she laboured on about this. So I went to this healer who lived far away from me, and she opened the door and she took one look at me and she said, "Development group now." And I thought she was potty. I wanted to run down the road, but didn't. Anyway, it transpired that she ran development groups, which in those days was run in connection with spiritualist church. So I went along and I sat in this group. I was the youngest there, and they were talking to dead people. And I thought, and I didn't know anybody who died at that point. And I thought, oh, I'm never coming to this place again. But at the end of the session, we did a meditation, and a meditation that I can only describe as alignment. And in that moment, I felt myself for the first time. And I realized that I'd been drawing on, and like a porous energy, drawing on other people and getting into a bit of a pickle. And this was so strong. Of course, I did continue going back. And that led on to me, the lady that ran it emigrated to New Zealand. That led me on to going to a psychic organization in London, and I'd only been there a year, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But, you know, it was, in a way, it was a pastime. That's all it was at that point. And then one day the teacher came up to me. She said, "Right, dear," she said, "you're ready to work now." And I didn't have a clue what she was talking about that. And she said, "Oh, yes, you're definitely ready to work now." So the long and short of it was, I spent 12 years, over 12 years at that organization, working as a medium, psychic and healer. So it was a very important time for my development. And although I had not a great interest in mediumship, that is, talking to people who've passed over, what I did observe was, in the group that I'd sat in, that whatever was going on, it was making us better people. It was making us more healthy. It was making us more aligned. And that part of it totally fascinated me. That the whole self-development aspect, I was enthralled by that. So then eventually I was asked to teach there. I taught there, and I revolved the classes around personal and spiritual development. Therefore, as I say, I can't actually remember how long it was, 12, 14 years. And then I couldn't do much more in the place that I was, and I knew I had to leave. So I left and opened what was the School of Insight and Intuition in Southwest London. So that's a very potted background of where I came from. Now, I've had, I don't know how many students over the year. I've been doing this a very long time. I'm actually 71. So to the guy that's only 60, good for you, I'm 71. So I've been doing this a very long time. Moved to France 17 years ago. Still ran the school in Southwest London, but just before lockdown and all that happened, started doing all the work online. So here we are. So that's a very potted background of my the way I came into this. I should say that in the interim I wrote books, did quite a lot of channeling at one point, and so on and so forth. And one of the reasons I opened the school was I was really keen to get this work into mainstream education. And that was our mission statement when we started the school. And in actual fact, it happened within 3 years. We were running courses at Westminster University and Middlesex University and other FE colleges. So, you know, I managed to do exactly what I wanted to do, because I felt that this work was so important that it should be in mainstream. I believe I'm out of touch really with that side of things now, but I believe, and people tell me, that there's all sorts of things going on, which is great. So let's look at the whole thing of psychic development. Now, I often say, if you've got 10 fingers and you want to play the piano well, if you practice enough, you'll get pretty good. And some people may even become concert pianists. And working with psychic energies is the same. It is about practice and dedication. You can be as naturally psychic as you like, but I would say that everybody needs some kind of teaching and learning in the process. Now, when I first came into this work, it was very, very sparse. Apart from spiritualist churches and a few other things, there was very little going on at all. But since then, it's all over the place. And what I'd say to you, if you are budding psychics, budding healers, find yourself a good teacher and don't be afraid to say no, because there's an awful lot of good stuff out there, but I have to tell you, there's an awful lot of rubbish as well. Use your good sense. Don't lose your rationale in all of this. Don't be sort of drawn off. This work is fraught with difficulties, and it's very easy to be sidetracked. It's very easy to go down blind alleys, and I've been down 2 or 3, I can tell you. Use your intuition in the first place. If it feels right, it almost certainly is right. If it doesn't feel right, it's almost certainly not right for you. And one teacher can be very good for one person, but not very good for someone else. So it doesn't necessarily mean that someone is great, all the time. It's very individual. So psychic energy has different layers. And to make it very simple, you can equate these different layers to the chakra system. And I still use the chakra system because I think it's one of the best systems there is, because it gets us in touch with the very physical and the very spiritual. So you can equate those layers, and I'll just briefly go through what I'm talking about. So on the base level, it's a very animal psychic perception. And don't underestimate the value of that, because that could literally save your life. So it's an animal sense of danger, maybe an animal sense when you meet someone for the first time, you get a feeling that yes, you can resonate, no, you can't. So that's very base level, and all these levels have their purpose. So I don't really like to talk in terms of higher or lower, because, as someone said to me years and years ago, you can only get as high as you can if your root center is the same length going down. So it's like you have to be grounded like a tree. A tree has tap roots right down into the earth so it can spread its leaves above. And so each level has its purpose and its use. So the next level up I call tribal. And this is when you're very psychically attuned to your society, your family. So it's a sort of sense you get where, maybe this is not relevant nowadays with so many internets, but if the phone rings, you know who that is. It's maybe a member of your family or something. There is an attunement to your tribe. And again, that has its many uses. Now, the next stage is the most common. So the next stage we can call auric. Now, everybody is exuding an energy all the time. We're all exuding an energy out and around us. And we pick that up all the time. Even those people who are really class themselves as not sensitive at all will be picking up that energy. And it's very common. It's like you meet someone, you get a feeling about them, you go in a house, you might go into a new building and think, oh yes, this feels like a happy place, or this feels like, oh, I don't like the feeling of this. We're picking it up all the time. And even in our vocabulary, we use language that picks it up. You know, you say, oh, she looks a bit browned off today. Oh, I'm in the pink, got the blues. All these things that people say in common language, and it's about picking up that energy. So auric is very useful for many things. It's very useful for healers for a start, because a healer will either physically walk around or mentally tune into that person and pick up that what is coming out of that person. So that's one very good use. It's very good for it's very good at knowing oneself. And there's a whole thing I could talk about that, but I'll keep it brief at this point. So if you go to a psychic fair, for instance, most psychics working there will be working on an auric level. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, except you have to hope and pray that that psychic really knows what they're doing. Because when you make a link on the auric level, you are picking up everything. You are picking up that person's hopes. You're picking up their fears. You might even pick up what they've seen on the television the day before, because most things hold in the aura for about 24, 48 hours. But if somebody's got an obsession, that obviously will hold in the aura a lot longer. So it's very good to mirror and to get in contact with someone, who they are, what they're doing, how they react, and so on. The problem occurs when, if that psychic doesn't know what he or she's really doing, she could pick up something like someone's fear and mirror it back to them as an actuality, and alternatively pick up wishes. I'll just give you a brief example. Maybe you sit down opposite a psychic and the psychic says, oh yes, you're going for a new job. You've just been for a job interview, and it's you've got the job, because that person is exuding that energy. Oh, the interview went well, I feel really pleased, I'm going to get the job. But it may not be true, because that psychic is picking up what is coming off that person. So it's not necessarily reality. And I give you another example that happened to me years ago. I had a lady who came to me in great distress. She'd been to a psychic and she'd been told that both her daughters were going to die. Now, apart from the ethical aspect of that, which obviously is, you know, not on, her daughters were not going to die. However, this lady's greatest fear was the loss of her daughters. So that psychic, whoever it was, picked that up and just gave it back to her. And so it's really important that if you're working on that auric level, which is very profitable for all sorts of reasons, but you need to also be working on a higher level. And the higher level, of course, comes to the heart. Now, we've all heard the expression unconditional love. And there is no question that unconditional love is what we need to be seeking and working with. However, I've found out that very few people actually really understand what unconditional love is. And I suppose the most basic way I can describe it is acceptance. It's what religious people might call surrender, but it's not a passive energy. It's an active energy. And unconditional, the hint is in the title, is unconditional. So if you as a psychic or a healer come to your client on that note of unconditionality, you will get a much clearer aspect and much clearer ability to do the work properly. But of course, that unconditional love also means that you yourselves have to be on that note of unconditionality. Now, unless you're the Dalai Lama or something, you're probably not going to be on that note 24/7. We can all aim for that, but we're all human. So we'll come off and on and off it. However, and this is where the training comes in, if you have training, you'll know when you're on that level. You'll absolutely know it. And if you're not, you can get back to it. And that includes in your personal lives as well. You know, you can't, this is not something you do on a Sunday, go to church and then do something else the rest of the time. It has to be real. It has to be where you are. So the work that one does on oneself is of absolute paramount importance. It's top of the tree of what you need to do. So I often get asked, what can I do to you know, be more in touch with my intuition to do this work? And the answer will always be the same: work on yourself, work on yourself, work on yourself. It's as clear. And you work on yourself, and it's like the proverbial onion, isn't it? Layers and layers. You might have some big transformation and think, whoopee, I'm there, but there'll be something else along the line, because it's almost like shaving off all what I call the noise. So the noise, what I call the noise, is what we all have. And the noise comes from childhood, comes from society, comes from your own personal experiences you've had, and they hold in your energy field. So there is a strong element of psychology in this work, actually. And when I did my research project, it became more and more clear to me that actually a lot of what we do is automatic psychology, which will come to you intuitively, but it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of psychology training. Certainly would help you in your own releasing anything that's going to hold you. Because if you want to be a clear instrument, you need to be as clear as you can yourself. There's no getting away from that. The clearer you are is the clearer that you're going to make that link with someone, whether you're a healer, a psychic, or whatever. So obviously, I'm an advocate of meditation. I'm not, however, an advocate of long drawn out meditation. If one is meditating properly, you can do it in 5 minutes or even less. But it is, as Tim used that lovely word, it is about intent. So the words that I use for myself and to my students, I ask only that which is for the highest, greatest good. So there are many beings of light in our universe, and some of those can be very helpful. If you're a healer, you've almost certainly touched on an angelic energy, what we call an angelic energy, and that's lovely. But your intent always must be that which is only for the highest, greatest good. And as human beings, we don't always know, and maybe even rarely know, what is the highest, greatest good for people. You know, and so to come to this as a clear instrument means that you have to put to some extent your own personality, your persona aside, and link with that person where they are, not where you are. So having created structures to some extent to the training that I do and the training I've given up, one of the things that we look at is bias, prejudice, and assumptions. Now, everybody has got some bias, prejudice, or assumptions. They may come from something that happened to you childhood. They may come from someone telling you this person is bad, or this type of person is bad. But I say to my students, look, think of the person that you dislike most in the world. It could be somebody you watch on the television or whatever. Think of that person. Think of that person coming in your room and wanting healing. Are you going to be able to come to that person with unconditional love? And that's a really, really important question. So working on yourself, working with that loving energy. And, you know, my supervisor was doing my research, said to me one day, Julie, are you telling me that all your students are like saints? And I said, no, not at all. But when you get used to that energy and you work with it, you know it. And even in really difficult times of your own personal life, you can come back to it. And that's the most important thing. It's almost like an alignment. You're training that alignment to come in and out. So that is the most important thing to look for. And, you know, I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, at some point have put up somewhere, whatever you think of your highest, greatest good, that you want to serve, that you want to help. I don't think you'd be doing this work if you didn't want to do some service. And the moment you do that, I can assure you that everything that happens in your life, both personal and professional, will be part of that growth. So it may be that there are certain things you have to address in your own life, and somewhere along the line, life will present you the opportunity to do that. So in a sense, if you can take the attitude of everything that happens to you is part of this process. Now, I'm not saying this to bolster your ego, because actually, if you are working with unconditional love, that has no ego. You know, do the best you can with what you have, asking only for the highest, greatest good, and then let it go. What happens to that person afterwards is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to do what you can with your, whatever you do, your psychic meeting or reading or consultation or healing or whatever. Your job is to get that bit right. What happens to that person afterwards is up to them. I strongly advise you not to get involved in people's personal life too much. You need some degree of loving detachment. Otherwise, you are going to be drip dried and really, probably worst case scenario, have a nervous breakdown. You can't hold on to things. So part of the training is opening up, yes, but also leaving it behind you. So if you see someone as a healer, as a psychic, you see them, you give them 100% the best you can. And then when they walk out the door or close their Zoom or whatever, that's it, you've done it. And if they want to come back to you, they will, for whatever reason. But really, the least you can be involved in their absolute day-to-day life, the better. Now, for me, it's actually very easy because I have the most dreadful memory anyway. And when you're in the zone, there's a kind of link that doesn't actually very much come into your conscious, rational mind. So you can do it. And then once I've finished, I don't remember. And in fact, you know, people come back to me and said, last time you said ABC, I haven't got a clue what they're talking about. I come to everything completely fresh. And I think that's a safety valve for me personally. And, you know, for yourselves, if you can do it. So we talked a lot about the heart center, which is, in a way, the heart center is your base for the work you're going to do, whether you work aurically, astrally, and so on. That is going to be your safe place from which to work from. Now, as we go up from the heart center, you probably be picking up things that, for simplification, I'll call them unseen things. So you may pick up things from spirit. You may get clairaudience, which is some form of channeling that comes through, and so on. I say a little bit that may or may not please some of you, but this is just how I feel. I've watched psychics and mediums, I've trained them for 40 years or something. And a lot of mediums who say they are linking with someone in spirit really aren't. They're taking that out the aura. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to be careful with that. Spirit will come through under certain circumstances, but it's incredibly difficult, even for an adept psychic, to tell the difference whether that is coming from someone's aura or whether that is actually a link with spirit. But, you know, it is a very particular type of work. And because the way that my work has gone, where my aspirations are to help that person in their life at that time, I find that, yes, I do get links with spirit sometimes, but only if it has a particular reason or meaning for that person at that time. It's holding something back. For example, maybe somebody had a really bad experience in their childhood with one of their parents. So maybe one of the parents will come through, and it's almost like a therapy session goes on. There is some therapy between the soul in spirit and the person, because they're still hanging on to whatever that happened to them in their childhood. So it can be really profitable from that point of view. Some people have a greater disposition to work in the astral level, and that's absolutely fine, and that's the work they will do. But again, it's got to come from unconditionality. Many things will come up when you're giving a consultation, and some things sometimes are very shocking. And of course, your conscious mind might kick in and say, oh no, she shouldn't do that. That's the wrong thing to do, or something like that. But you cannot go there. It's not about you telling someone what to do. Your job is not to tell someone what to do. Your job is to show them where they are and show them their potential, their positive potential working forward. So that can be a trap that sometimes one can get into. Many examples of that, many and varied. I might relay a couple in a minute. Let's just go through the layers first. Then, of course, you come to the brow center. Well, the brow center, you know, the image of the third eye, the visionary, and so forth. Now, when someone comes to you for a reading or healing, they might say to you, I want you to channel, I want you to do this, but actually they don't really want that, because they want to know what's going on with them now, because the visionary energy is the picture beyond the clouds. It's the bigger picture. And the bigger picture doesn't always relate to the personal. It'll come through when it's needed, but, you know, the higher you go in your psychic links, the less personal information you will get coming through. So if you're working, you know, directly in Crown, you won't get any personal information at all. And in fact, on that level, you won't get a lot of words either. It'll be energy. And that, if you are a healer that works on that level, that's a very high level indeed. But not necessary for most people, to be perfectly honest, because you have to meet the person where they are, not where you are. And also, when things come to light about someone, and you may have some thoughts what you would do in that situation, it's not your job to tell them what you would do. It's your job to meet them where they are and what is right for them and guide them to where they are. And, you know, one of the privileges of linking with different people is they will be so very different from you. They may not have the same ethics. They may not have the same desires. They may come from very different cultures, races, all sorts of things. They're not going to be the same as you. So for you to give them what you think on a personal level is right for them is not right for them. You need to meet them where they are. So you need to be very broad in your connectedness. So that's sort of very briefly different levels of psychic perception. Ultimately, if one was to reach enlightenment, and hopefully we will one day in this life or another life, we probably wouldn't be doing this work at all, because there would be no need to be doing this work. So, you know, strive for the highest, and at some point in some life or other, probably you will get the highest, but maybe not just yet. So I'm going to pause there. Let me just think for a moment, is there anything that's vitally left out? Oh, I just say one quite funny thing that I often relate. I mentioned that we work on bias, prejudice, and assumptions. And what I do in some classes, I say, okay, identify what your prejudices are if you can. There was one particular girl many years ago who was very emphatic. She knew what her prejudice was. She said, I'm prejudiced against middle-aged, middle-class men. Fine. So I also suggest to them, if possible, if it is possible, that you can make some communication with this person that you have prejudice for. Oh, no, she was never going to do that. I mean, she was emphatic. So the following week they came back and I said, how did you get on? So on. And she said, well, she said, you're not going to believe this. She said, the day after the class, I got locked in a lift with a middle-aged, middle-class man for an hour and a half, him and I on our own. So I said, okay, so how did that go? She said, well, okay, we have some similarities. You know, it's almost like that, you know, whatever it is, that energy, that spiritual energy gives you exactly what you need at any given time. And I have to say, and this is a very good way to live your life, actually, the challenges we have are the opportunities for growth. And we will all have challenges. And I think that everybody on this spiritual path, because it is a spiritual path, and actually everybody's on a spiritual path, except most people don't know it. But you guys do know it. You know you're on a spiritual path. And when you're on a spiritual path, that path is going to put in front of you exactly what you need. And sometimes that can be very challenging indeed. But you need to see things as an opportunity for growth, to actually work within the lived experience. This is not work you can just do for an hour or two a week or something. It's got to be lived. So, you know, you don't have to be saints, but you do have to really, really work on that level. But as I say, almost at the end of each class I ever give, don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to have laugh. You don't need to walk around like some pious creature, I'm better, holier than thou. Have a good laugh, have a good joke, have fun, enjoy. Seek for your joy. Whatever gives you joy will be the best energy for you. And it's always good to have a counterbalance in this work as well. So it could be, oh, I like to go dancing, or I like to join a choir or something. There needs to be something to balance that energy as well in your lives. So I've talked a bit now. There's an enormous amount more I could say. I should just, very bad at giving plugs, but I'm just about next week to start a couple of short courses. If you're interested, don't hesitate to contact me. My email is very simple, julie@juliesoskin.com. And I have got a few places left. So if you want to join, it's on Zoom. So, and it works really well on Zoom. So have I sort of tweaked any buttons here? Have I said anything that you disagree with, want to argue with? That's great. You know,
I'm
come
just
back
going
at
to
me.
I'm just going to butt in, Julie, and just clarify the short course that you've got coming up. What is that
Okay.
really about? What you've been talking about? Is it about the
Yes.
collection upstairs?
Yes. I've actually got one called Unfoldment, which has actually been the title of many of my courses through the years. And Unfoldment is exactly what it says. It's an unfoldment working to help dissolve anything that is stop you being a clear instrument, as well as linking with the different levels of psychic energies. And I actually made these two coming up very short. So they're 4 weeks. So it's an hour and a bit for 4 weeks. And the other one is actually a course, one of the very first courses I ever did. And it's called The Self and the Tarot Revealed. And it's using the major arcana of the tarot to help you again unfold and work to know more about yourself and so on. And that's quite a fun class. I mean, they're both fun. It depends how you look at it. But unfoldment is really the keystone of the work I do. So, you know, do let me know. And
how much are they? Because you've got an offer on at the moment.
Yes, I have. And in fact, just as lockdown started, I mean, the courses had a certain price, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to reduce my prices. So I reduced my prices for lockdown, and actually they have hardly gone up at all. And because I get a really nice sense from you guys, if you want to do it, I can also take off a little bit. It should be 72, but you can have it for 35. I just feel that that's the way to go. And also, I have I'm very sort of lax really with money. Money is not something I'm very good at. So if people want to pay by staggered payment, if they tell me they've got any real difficulties with finances, I'm always incredibly flexible.
Thank you for that, Julie. This is exactly why I wanted you here, because what you've talked about in that first half an hour or so there about using the chakras as the basis, and so many of your comments were absolutely spot on, brilliant, fantastic. I mean, if people have got to listen to this conversation, what you've said, I urge everybody to go back over it, listen to it again, because it's so spot on. I love it. Brilliant. Right, I'm going to shut up.
And say one thing here. I talked a lot about unconditional love. Now, this work isn't about judging yourself. This is not about thinking, oh my God, I've been a terrible person, this, that, and the other. Maybe you've done things that you would do differently now, but it's not about judgment. It's not about being critical. It's about being aware. So I just want to say that to love yourself as you are.
Exactly, it's actually putting the unconditional love back on yourself as well as it's basically existing from that point of view. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So over to whoever would like to ask Julie a question. Sorry, this is Dawn's role to host the question time, so I'm going to hand it over to Dawn to be in charge of this bit.
Okie dokie, thanks, Tim. So who's got a question? Everybody's muted, so if you've got a question, pop your hand up, unmute, and Paul.
Hello.
Hiya. Yeah, it's me.
What's your name?
Paul.
Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hi. Really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. And my question is, I've talked to quite a lot of healers and teachers and everything else, and I've done healing modalities, etc. myself. So one of the first ones I learned was pranic healing, and they were very clear that you shouldn't do pork, you shouldn't do catfish, you shouldn't do eels. And then I met another healer last year who said you shouldn't do tea, you shouldn't do coffee, you shouldn't do alcohol, to give you your clear channel. Do vegan, do meat, do this. I'd be most intrigued to see what you think on those levels, because there's so many different stories. And as it's January the 1st and everyone's starting a new year and all health programs and God knows whatever else, I'd be intrigued to know how you operate or what you think.
So, okay, I'm going to be extreme now. I'm going to go the extreme level. If you were enlightened, or even if you're fairly balanced, you could eat something from a dustbin.
Right.
I know that's going to shock people, but our bodies are all unique. Now, if somebody says that to you, it's probably something they found work for them. It does not mean that it needs to work for you. There's a very good exercise, actually, that I give people sometimes, and that is just to lie down on the floor, just be, in a quiet space, lie down on the floor and just breathe into each chakra, starting with the base, going right up to the crown, and then come back. And if you can, hum, make a sound into the heart center, hum, and ask what is right for you. Ask your body, be in touch with your body. It's really important not to leave your body behind. And some people don't resonate with eating meat. That's fine. It's not going to make you a better healer if you stop eating meat and your body needs meat. In fact, it probably make you a worse healer because your body's going to get anxious, So you need to just really feel for yourself. And even when you go to a shop or a supermarket to buy your food, use your body as a dowsing rod almost. So if you go towards, I don't know, a piece of steak and your body is going, oh, yes, my body really needs that, buy it. If your body repels, no, it's not right for you.
Yeah.
So really and truly, people talk from their own personality, their own perspective. And there are certain schools that I know that will say, oh, you've got to be a vegetarian, you've got to be a vegan. I'm not one of them.
Right. Okay. Well,
just do what feels right for your body. And if it's right that you give up meat, give up meat. But I would say also, I'm the worst culprit at this because I'm a terrible cook. If you cook your own food, try to cook it lovingly.
Yeah.
When I go into a restaurant, I can tell what mood that cook's been in because it's in the food.
Yeah, I agree.
Do some lovingness with your food. And if you eat an animal, a meat, pray, give some blessing to that animal that's given its life for you to have nourishment. I completely understand why, for many reasons, people don't want to eat meat. And in fact, I did have a period of time when I was a vegetarian. I can tell you my body really, for several months, I was fine. And then suddenly I wasn't fine. And I do eat meat now. Not a lot, but I do. And I don't think it affected my abilities whatsoever.
Fantastic, thank you. No, it was that whole picture, alcohol as well, or not alcohol, and sugars and things. So it's just trying to get a sort of a balanced view from different people.
If you're in touch with how you feel, you will know if you drink alcohol and you've had a bad effect of it. You will be able to know that. Trust it. Trust your own feeling. And moderation in all things, of course. Including food. If you eat too much crisps, you're going to get fat.
Yeah, you're only here once, in one sense. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Good luck with it. And I want to say to you, my love, because you were talking earlier, whatever difficulties we have, and whatever your beliefs are, you are never, ever going to have this life again. Yeah. And it's taken millions
it's all good around me. I have extraordinary things happen around me. So I'm knocks you off kilter for for a half an hour or an hour, and then when you start looking at it from a different viewpoint, you go, okay, right, I can see why that happened. So
But I say this a lot, and it might be because I'm now in my 70s, and I think, God, it's a privilege to be alive. It's taken thousands of years to make me and the other people around me. We are privileged to be on this most incredible planet that is flying across the universe, thousands of miles an hour as we speak. It is such a privilege to have a life. And really just to understand and know that. And this planet is magical. Each blade of grass is a piece of magic, if you think about it. And I know there's an awful lot of wrong for the world, and I don't want to get too much into that, because we all know there's hell and God knows what going on around our world. We're into enormous transitional period that some of us have known about this for years. I wrote a book, The Wind of Change, in 1990, and it was all in there. So we're right in the middle of it now. But sometimes there has to be chaos for something to come out of it. And I am largely positive about the world, but one can get very, very upset by, particularly if you look at the news. And I know some people don't look at the news because they can't bear it, and I completely understand that. However, if you do look at the news, or you see some tragedy or whatever, don't weep and wail about it. That will not do anybody any good at all. Put that image in light, send it off into spirit. Keep doing that. You're helping to heal the world. Don't hold on to it. Okay.
Great.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Any more questions?
Well, it would be quite nice to hear one or two of your experiences, because I understand that some of you are working in the field. Was there anything you'd like to share with the group?
I'll just share, I had, there's an awful lot of alignment what you were saying with my personal beliefs about this work. And I think there's, maybe a couple of my students on here that could probably, a lot of it resonated with some of the things that I talk with them about. This sense of psychic picking up what's in the kind of the immediacy of a client is kind of one of my soapboxes a little bit. In that, very often they'll either, mirror back fears from the client, but sometimes it's their own, aspects that they're picking up as well.
Yeah.
And I used to run a metaphysical affair, and we had one psychic that we had a number of complaints about, because what she was doing is suggesting to, and this is all on the same day, 3 different clients that the children were in danger.
Oh,
I won't go
Lord.
into more detail than that. And really she was triggering a fear in herself and causing so much damage and harm to the clients coming through. And when I spoke to her about it, could not see anything wrong with what she was doing. So it is so incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, something I talk about also is transference, which is a psychology title. And you transfer, and people do it all the time, by the way. This was first discovered by Freud when he realized that his clients were transferring onto him their hurt and their fear. And that does happen, but it happens in day-to-day life as well. I can remember years ago, I've got 2 sons, and one of them was a child, and we were having a kids' party, and I went into this hall, and this woman just turned around to me and started, I'd never met her before, and she kept accusing me of being menopausal and what a terrible person she was. And I immediately saw, oh my goodness, she is really, this is not me. I mean, I was only like 20 something at the time. I was not menopausal, and this was her stuff. So this is why, again, it's so important to be as clear an instrument as you can. so that you know, you don't transfer your stuff or allow other people to transfer onto you. I mean, that's very sad, because obviously that particular lady is full of fear.
Exactly. Melanie says, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. She's had to jump off the meeting. And Melinda, you have your hand up waiting patiently, so I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yes, hello, Julie. This
Hello.
is such an honor and a privilege to hear your talk this morning. I just had a question. You mentioned that a lot of your career was dedicated to bringing this information to the mainstream and to schools and children in particular. And I too share your enthusiasm for that work. In fact, I've written a social emotional curriculum for 4 to 7-year-olds, teaching them to see their hearts as an alternative source of wisdom in their bodies, and to connect to that and kind of highlight, cultivate, and celebrate that innate predisposition that I think you were referring to when you spoke.
Have you got to take that one, or is it just through the camera?
Oh, sorry. Anyway, when you spoke of this is a gift that we all share, I think especially when children are very young, they're very highly intuitive. And
Yeah.
anyway, I guess my question is, how can I learn a little bit more about the work that you have kind of put out into the world, and is there a book or?
Yes.
Yes.
I wrote a book some years ago. I can't remember how many years ago now. Oh, actually not that long, 7 years ago. Anyway, it's called The Psychic's Handbook, and it's published by Watkins. And that gives quite a good overview of actually what I've been talking about today. So that's one I would recommend. But I mean, I came to this really strong notion about trying to put it in mainstream education quite late. I was too late to work with children because there are very strict rules about working with children, and so on. And I was too old and I couldn't go there. But I did get it into universities and higher education. But I'm profoundly keen on getting either just simple things. Children are so open to this. I mean, it's really, life gets in the way with children. You think of a 2-3-year-old whose little eyes open with wonder at the world, and everything is magic. And I think would that we could live our lives like that. So I'm so pleased to hear, and I do hear from time to time in small ways, but nonetheless really important ways. Even if giving, a classroom a couple of minutes quiet time when they're asked to sort of listen to their breathing or something, that is so profound.
Yes.
And I do believe everybody knows within themselves what is right.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be taught in a religious mode or something, and God save us from dogmas, but in people's hearts, in their souls, they know what is right, and children are more open than most. So good on you. Well done.
Well,
keep up the good work.
No, you're a real inspiration. Thank you so much.
Tim, it sounds like that the Psychic's Handbook should be core curriculum for our work.
No, I agree. Yeah, definitely. We put together a list when we're doing house healer training, Julie. So we'll be putting Psychic's Handbook on the list, and I will be picking up a copy. So I remember actually your book. I can't remember which one it was. One of your early books was one of the first books I read when I was, experiencing the change. Sounds like I was menopausal, but no. I mean, but when my life was changing, one of your books was the one that really took me forward. This is really, really good stuff. I'm sure some other people have got some more questions. Just for 10 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up completely. Melanie, I thought you'd left us.
Hello.
No, different Melanie. Hi.
Hello. Oh, hello.
Hi. It's funny you should say about suddenly hearing back from someone. I worked in national schools. I'm in Southern Ireland, and the children here are very, very open to the psychic being kind of from a Celtic land. And I used to get paid to be a witch in schools at Halloween, which was great. And the kids would tell me all these amazing stories. It was just, we used to really, Halloween is as big here as it is in America, which is wonderful. But my husband and I worked at a youth centre for many years, and I left to do my own thing. And he came home last night. He said, "You've got a message from one of your ex-students." And I thought, okay, it's been like 15 years since I've worked there. And I was a bit nervous because I read the tarot, and I thought they're just going to want me to read their tarot. And so I said, "Well, look, I don't have a mobile." So I said, "Would you text them and ask them what they want?" And apparently she's now a psychic and a medium. And I used to sit and talk to them all the time about weird and spooky and strange things. And she said, "Oh, it was because of you I became a medium." And I thought, you don't ever know what you do or what you say. Oh, it was just so heartening to hear that, because I can't actually remember who she is. When you're a teacher, you teach so many kids, and I'm thinking, which one was that? But no, she's rang up to say thank you, and I just thought that is so refreshing, because nobody usually does, do they?
No, that's lovely. I mean, the thing is, if you are someone that always wants validation, and you know, somebody that's just wants to boost their ego, "Oh, everybody loves me," forget it, you know. I mean, just do the best you can, as you obviously did, and it, you know, it will come back in some way. So well done. Did you say you're in Ireland?
On Southern Ireland, Joe, in County Clare.
Oh, right. Just an amusing thing, because I wanted to do it for ages. I had my genetics done,
Oh,
and
right.
I found out I'm 20% Irish.
Does it say what part of Ireland?
No, it doesn't actually, but definitely Southern Ireland by the sound of it. Yeah. So I'm yeah, there you go. I don't know, just give you that piece of useless information.
Not useless. We came on our honeymoon 30 years ago, and we're still here. So I warn you.
Well, I have been to Ireland once. I did go to Dublin. I did a workshop in Dublin years ago. Lovely energy, isn't it? Beautiful place.
Lovely people too. I love it here.
And it's, you know, over the years, sometimes when I was doing a lot of traveling all over the place, invariably over a weekend, someone would sidle up to me and they'd say, "You know, this is the heart of the world where we are now." And I would nod my head and say, yes, because whoever it is the heart of the world. But basically, anywhere is the heart of the world. It's the energy that you give to it.
May I ask why you moved to France? I'm just curious.
Why? Oh, that's a very long story. Basically, in a very, very short nutshell, it was to do with my father-in-law, who was very ill at the time.
I'm so sorry.
Who is now passed over. But yes, we were looking after my father-in-law. So that was the mundane reason.
Before I forget, there was another you were saying about how people pick things up. I used to do the psychic fairs. I'm a tarot reader, so I hated it. It's like a conveyor belt, so I don't do it other than on Zoom anymore. And my husband and I went to the local psychic fair here, and just because it was a thing to do, and I always read his cards. He said, "No, I'll get somebody else to do it for once." And there was one man sitting there all on his own. No one was going near him. He was, and my husband felt sorry for him. I swear he did. And so his name's Wolf. He's part Danish, and we had the motorbikes, we had leather jackets and everything. But he's the most gentle soul, and he's an artist. He's not at all kind of ferocious. And he sat down feeling sorry for this man, and the guy spent the next hour telling him about how he'd been in a knife fight and he'd lost his best friend, and he wasn't. It was really embarrassing.
Well, there you go. That's a really good illustration of somebody, you know, and I say to my students, you know, do not make assumptions. Somebody could walk in and they could be, you know, pristinely dressed, and they could be an absolute mess, or you could get somebody who's got holes in their shirt and all, and they could be a millionaire or something. Please do not make assumptions. And this is, again, is about working from the heart. Just work as an open, loving heart as much as you can. Oh, well done you anyway.
Thank you, and you're fascinating, so thank you very much.
Okay, time for one more question before we close. Looks like we are all complete. I have really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, Julia. Inspirational, and some really phenomenal wisdom that you've shared. So really, really appreciate you taking the time. Yes, round of applause. Woohoo. Virtual round of applause.
I just say, you know, follow your joy, guys. Follow, you know, lots of people ask me over the years, what should I be doing? And I don't like the word should, ought, could, might. Forget those words. What do I want? What feeds me? What gives me joy? And follow that, and you can't go much wrong with that. And so finally, thank you for listening to me today. If you would like to contact me, julie@juliesoskin.com, or you can go to the school's website, which is insightandintuition.com. And I'll be very happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. So the your contact details are all in the meeting. When I put the recording up, I will put them in again so that you can get to them really easy. And I'll also just put them into our Facebook group independently as well. So there is no excuse to visit Julie's website and reach out and contact her. So thank you again, and lovely words to end our Zoom with.
I wish you
Tim,
sorry,
sorry,
I was just
no,
going to say, I
go
wish
ahead.
you all a very joyous 2024. Life's an adventure.
Bring it on. Tim, anything else that you want to say before we close?
No, I just want to add my thanks. Thank you, Julie. It's been brilliant, as I knew it would be. So we won't leave it another 10 years before we speak.
No, please do. Please contact me.
I will. I'm going to drop you an email.
Great.
And we'll fix something up. We'll get you on the channel, and because I'd like to talk in more general terms for the public about heart-based living and intention and the power of that, and really get some of that out there. And it may well be that Melinda, with her breadcrumbs experience, the education experience, might want to touch base with you if you have time to maybe share some of your knowledge, Julie, with Melinda. Then that would be also brilliant. But again, I know you're busy, you've got so much on, but quite frankly, again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been wonderful.
Pleasure.
Wonderful.
Pleasure. Love to everyone.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
So well.
Goodbye.
Our next session is Q&A in February. So an open forum for lots of chat. See you then.
Bye for now. Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.